We've all been there, standing in the middle of our living room, frantically waving a plastic stick at the television, or jumping around like a person possessed, only for the character on the screen to do absolutely nothing. There was a time in the mid-2000s when every tech executive on the planet convinced themselves that buttons were obsolete. They told us that the future of gaming wasn't in our thumbs, but in our shoulders, our hips, and our dignity. From the revolution of the Wii to the infrared nightmares of the 80s, motion sensing has promised us total immersion, but frequently delivered nothing but broken vases and intense frustration. Some of these features were ahead of their time, while others felt like they were designed by people who had never actually seen a human move before. These are the worst motion sensing features that made us question why we ever put down the controller. Power Pad, NES. Before the Wii Fit mat, there was the Power Pad, released for the NES. This was a massive gray sheet of plastic with 12 pressure-sensitive buttons. The idea was simple: run in place to make your character run on screen. It sounded like the ultimate fitness tool for 1988, but the execution was a mechanical disaster. The pad used simple membrane switches that were notoriously unresponsive, unless you stomped with the force of a small elephant. However, the real reason it's on this list isn't just the unresponsiveness, it's the cheating factor. Most kids quickly realized that you didn't actually have to run. You could just sit on the floor and drum your hands on the pads. It wasn't motion sensing, it was a glorified floor button that taught an entire generation that exercise was a lie. The Power Glove, NES. I love the Power Glove. It's so bad. That line from the wizard became a prophetic warning for anyone who actually bought one. The Power Glove was supposed to be the ultimate sci-fi peripheral, allowing you to control games through finger flexes and hand tilts. It used ultrasonic sensors, tiny microphones placed on your TV, to track where your hand was. In theory, you were a digital sorcerer. In practice, you were a kid holding your arm at a 90-degree angle until it went numb, trying to get Mario to jump while the glove interpreted your movements as a request to walk off a cliff. The finger mapping was so inconsistent that even simple menu navigation felt like performing surgery with a sledgehammer. It remains the gold standard for cool concept, zero functionality. U-Force, NES. If you thought the Power Glove was finicky, meet the U-Force. This was a hands-free controller that used infrared sensors to detect movement in a 3D space. You opened it up like a laptop, placed it on the floor or table, and waved your hands over it. It promised to track your movements without you ever touching a button. The problem was that infrared technology in 1989 was about as precise as a weather forecast. If a stray beam of sunlight hit the sensors, your character would spin in circles. If you moved your hand an inch too far to the left, the connection was lost. It was less of a controller and more of a box that dared you to stay perfectly still while pretending to play Punch-Out. Sega Activator. Genesis. Sega's response to the motion craze was the Activator, an octagonal ring of sensors that sat on the floor. You stood inside it, and each zone of the ring corresponded to a button on the Genesis controller. To punch, you threw a punch over a specific sensor. To move, you kicked a leg out. It looked like a training tool for the Power Rangers, but it was a logistical nightmare. Because it used infrared beams reflecting off the ceiling, it only worked if you had a perfectly flat white ceiling at a specific height. If you had a ceiling fan, a vaulted ceiling, or even a fly in the room, the Activator would lose its mind. It was an expensive way to realize that simply pressing yay was a lot more efficient than trying to perform a roundhouse kick in your bedroom. PlayStation 2 EyeToy. Long before the Kinect, Sony gave us the EyeToy. It was a simple webcam that put your silhouette on the screen, allowing you to hit virtual objects. For 5 minutes, it was magic. For the 6th minute, you realized you needed the lighting of a professional film studio for the camera to see you. If your room was too dark, you were invisible. If it was too bright, you were a shapeless blob. The motion sensing was really just the camera detecting pixel changes, meaning if your cat walked behind you, the game thought you just scored a point. While it was successful in Europe, it proved that camera-based motion sensing was still years away from being a viable way to play real games. Sixaxis, PlayStation 3. When Sony revealed the PS3, they famously ditched the DualShock rumble in favor of the Sixaxis motion sensing, partly due to a lawsuit, but they claimed it was for innovation. The result was a controller that felt suspiciously light and hollow, featuring motion controls that felt tacked on at the last second. Who could forget the balancing sections in Uncharted, Drake's Fortune, or the shaking mechanic in Folklore? It was rarely used for anything meaningful. Instead, it was used to steer boats or turn valves, tasks that were objectively easier with an analog stick. It felt like Sony was trying to chase the Wii's shadow without understanding why the Wii worked, leading to a generation of waggle that no one asked for. Kinect, for Xbox 360, You are the controller. Microsoft's pitch for the Kinect was incredibly bold. No buttons, no sticks, just your body. It sold millions of units, but as a gaming device, it was a profound disappointment for anyone over the age of 10. The latency, the delay between you moving and the character moving, was often as high as half a second. In a fast-paced game, that's an eternity. It also required a massive amount of physical space. If you lived in a small apartment, the Kinect simply couldn't see your feet. It turned every game into a slow-motion dance, and the voice commands often required you to scream at your TV 3 times before it would pause a movie. Kinect 2.0, Xbox One. Microsoft doubled down on the Kinect for the Xbox One, making it a mandatory pack-in that raised the console's price by $100. The tech was significantly better. It could track your heartbeat and see in the dark. But the worst feature was the privacy concern and the lack of software. Microsoft forced a motion-sensing camera into every living room, yet barely released any games that used it. It became a very expensive way to say Xbox on, which worked about 70% of the time. Eventually, Microsoft unbundled it, killed the port on the back of the console, and let the Kinect die a quiet, lonely death. It remains one of the most expensive features in history to be completely abandoned by its creator. PlayStation Move. The Move was Sony's attempt to combine the Wii's precision with HD graphics. While the glowing orb tech was actually very accurate, the worst part was the sheer amount of clutter it required. You needed the camera, the wand, the navigation controller, and a charging station for all of it. Most games treated it as a peripheral for light gun shooters or mini-game collections. It felt like a 2006 solution to a 2010 market. While it eventually found a second life in PlayStation 5R, its initial run as a motion-sensing feature for the PS3 felt like a desperate attempt to grab the casual market that had already moved on to mobile phones. Wii U Gamepad. Tilt. The Wii U tried to innovate by putting a screen in your hands equipped with its own gyro sensors. This led to forced motion sensing in games where it made no sense. In Star Fox Zero, you had to look at the gamepad to aim and the TV to fly, using motion controls to tilt your cockpit view. It was a cognitive overload that most players hated. Instead of making the game more immersive, the motion sensing made it feel like you were trying to rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time. It was a feature that got in the way of the fun, proving that just because you can add motion controls to a flight sim doesn't mean you should. Motion sensing was the Wild West of gaming. It gave us moments of pure joy, but it also gave us a decade of broken hardware and shaky gameplay. These features failed because they forgot the golden rule of gaming. The controls should be invisible. When you're more focused on whether the camera can see your left foot than you are on the game itself, the immersion is broken. We've come a long way since the Power Glove, and while motion sensing has found a perfect home in VR, we can look back at these worst features and be thankful that for the most part, we can just sit back and press a button again. Thanks for watching.